Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Today, I am very excited for my interview with the one and only Robert Sikes. Robert, hi and welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be chatting with you.
Awesome. So, Robert, can you give our audience a little bit of a background about what you do?
Yeah, so I am a lifetime natural competitive bodybuilder. I've been bodybuilding since when I was a junior in high school. And I started doing the ketogenic diets in 2015. And I earned my pro card status in natural bodybuilding with a ketogenic approach in 2017. And I've pretty much since dedicated my life to optimizing performance via the ketogenic protocol and figuring out how to use that within the sport of natural bodybuilding and just optimizing body recomposition, building muscle, retaining muscle, and just living my best life. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
And what made you dig into keto? Because this is very rare in the bodybuilding world.
Yeah, definitely. So when I started competing, my first show was in 2012. That was with a traditional bro diet approach. I was eating 6 or 7 meals a day, high carbohydrates, high protein, lower fat. And I lost about 80 pounds in 12 weeks for that show. Looked great, but then afterwards really kind of went down a negative spiral with regards to binging and purging and just kind of, that was pretty much the catalyst for my disordered eating tendencies. And I did that for 2 or 3 years. And I just realized there had to be a better way that was more sustainable and healthier. So I started dabbling with a diet called carbohydrate backloading, which is basically keto minus the carbs. And that worked, but I was eating just a ton of carbs. And I knew that probably wasn't healthy long term. So I wound up doing carb backloading without carbs, which pretty much is keto. And then, this was before keto was nearly as prominent as it is today. There wasn't any podcasts or books or websites out about the subject, but I just started diving into that. And then I learned about keto through, I believe, a podcast with Tim Ferriss and Dom D'Agostino. And then pretty much from there, just optimized the ketogenic diet for me specifically within the sport of bodybuilding. Doing a bunch of trials and experimentation, figure out what macro distribution worked best for me, what was allowing me to get as lean as I needed to get for competing, and that worked really well. I was able to regain that healthy relationship with my food, no longer binging, purging. It was sustainable, it was healthy, and I have not looked back since.
Wow. So it's mainly the eating disorders that you found the greatest improvement in. And I find that very commonly in the keto and especially carnivore worlds. Do you find that common with the people that you work with?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because I've since worked with several athletes that have competed with traditional protocols similar to what I was doing, and have now gone through my protocol, which is strictly keto. And they'll pretty much explain the exact same phenomenons and symptoms that I was experiencing, which is, it's pretty typical post show for competitors to go on these binging, purging tendencies. I mean, there's more athletes that have disordered eating tendencies in the sport of bodybuilding than not, probably safe to say. So being able to just simply eat a diet that one can feel confident about, one can feel good about, one that is healthy, through and through, allows you to regain that relationship with food. Plus, there's not really any sacrifice to building lean tissue and getting lean. So I'm really excited about showcasing this as a way for other competitors because I think it truly is a healthier alternative.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Can you explain a little bit about the backloading approach that you were talking about without the carbs?
Yeah, so carb backloading, the protocol itself was developed by John Kiefer, and basically what that entails is eating pretty much a ketogenic diet throughout the early part of the day, and then at night eating a ton of high glycemic index carbs, like white rice, sugary foods, glucose, fructose, things that are going to be intentionally spiking your insulin drastically, and then clearing your system so that you go into the night to sleep without a whole bunch of carbs in circulation, but having that high glycemic index food. And it's oftentimes recommended to do, things like ice cream, things like pizza, things that are white, starchy carbs. So I was doing that, but it just wasn't healthy. Like I was literally eating a whole Betty Crocker tray full of brownies covered in peanut butter and syrup, which is just not the ideal, picture of health. And then I phased those carbs out and was doing, carb backloading minus the carbs, which I didn't know anything about keto at the time. So my fat ratio probably wasn't high enough. My protein was probably too high. I probably wasn't fully fat adapted when I was doing that. But I noticed from a gastric standpoint, I didn't have near the GI distress that I was with those boluses of carbs. So that alone was benefit to it. And then as I started tinkering with my fat ratio, increasing my fat, dropping my protein, kind of figuring out what the sweet spot for me was, that's when I just had more cognitive, benefit, more energy, better recovery with my training. And that's pretty much when I realized that the ketogenic diet was in effect what I was doing.
So you found a difference between, let's say, two kinds of diets. Both are very low carb, but one has a higher fat and the other one is not necessarily in ketosis, but it's maybe, let's say, 50% fat, 50% protein. You found a difference between those two with regards to your recovery and your performance?
Yeah, so a lot of people, especially right now, it's kind of an interesting landscape right now in the keto carnivore space. Like there's, it's kind of strange. I've been in the space for so long. I've seen these trends and these hypes come and go. And right now, protein has been given this halo, and it's almost as if fat has become demonized within the keto space and carnivore space again, which is just funny to think about. But that's kind of what we're seeing unfold. So a lot of people are coming into the space now, and they're being told to minimize dietary fat and have a really, really high protein. The idea being that their body is forced to tap into their stored fat, and that they can become fat adapted in the absence of dietary fat. The problem with that is, even if you're not consuming carbohydrates and glucose and your body is producing ketone bodies, if your metabolic pathways haven't been built to efficiently use those ketone bodies, then you're not going to feel great, because protein is not a great substrate for energy. You're either going to get your energy from carbs or fat. You can inefficiently create energy through gluconeogenesis, but it's not going to be optimal from an energy standpoint. So a lot of people that are doing really, really high protein and not enough dietary fat, and they're not yet fat adapted, are not going to feel optimal. So kind of tinkering around with that and figuring out what macro distribution is going to yield enough protein to build and retain muscle tissue, but then also enough fat to create energy is going to be the key.
And so would you say 80% fat, or what would be for you personally the best target?
Yeah, so it really depends what my goals are. So like I'll typically in a building phase, my main priorities are to ensure that I'm eating enough calories, enough protein, and eliciting enough stimulus with my training to give my body reason to grow and add more muscle tissue. So in that context, I'm eating 3,000 plus calories a day, and I'll typically stick to like a 1-to-1 ratio of protein grams to fat grams. So for me right now, that's about 200 grams of fat, 200 grams of protein. When I'm in a cutting phase, I'm manipulating my macros a lot more frequently. So I'll typically start a cut at a higher fat ratio, about 80% of my calories coming from fat. I'll start dropping my fat and simultaneously increasing my protein to figure out, in the context of that prep, where my unique protein threshold is. And then from there, I'll start dropping my protein, and then I'll wind up with a higher fat ratio, usually between 75-77% of my calories coming from fat at the very end of a prep. And then that is basically designed to give me an energy source while calories are very low. And it also kind of helps as a way to protect against, hormonal dips in the context of those lower calories there at the tail end of a prep. But in a building phase, in a maintenance phase, I'm typically around that 1-to-1 ratio of protein grams to fat, which winds up being about 68-69% of total calories coming from fat.
Okay, so I see, grams to grams, right? Not percentage. Okay, so
Yeah,
1-to-1 grams of protein to fat, which winds up being like 70% fat, right?
Exactly.
Right now
Exactly.
in maintenance. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
never really go below. I mean, I'll sometimes tease it down as far as 60% of my calories coming from dietary fat, but I never really go much lower than that.
Yeah, me too.
Because yeah, if you go below that, you don't have that much energy. You
You can't eat
typically
the
have a little
food.
more. Yeah, it's just
You
it's
can't,
not as
doesn't go
tasty.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to go back to eating bland chicken breast all day long? It's just not good.
No. We don't want to do that. So when you are cutting down and your fat is still pretty high, how much exercise are you, or no, how many calories are you burning with your exercise? And what is usually your caloric deficit? I'm just trying to see if the volume of the food on such a high fat amount is satiating to you.
Yeah, so great question. I'll start my preps at about my maintenance intake. So for simplicity's sake, let's just assume my maintenance intake is about 3,000 calories, which is pretty much the case. So I'll start my prep at about 3,000 calories, 80% of those calories coming from dietary fat. and then I'll start whittling down those calories over the course of 4 to 6 months, which is typically the length of my prep. Throughout that 4 to 6 month span, I'm increasing my protein at times, decreasing my protein at times, all the while total calories are decreasing. Apart from when I introduce ketogenic caloric refeeds there at the very end. At the very beginning, when my calories are pretty close to maintenance at around 3,000, I'm typically having 2, sometimes 3 meals a day. And those are pretty good sized meals. 3,000 calories is a pretty good deal of food. And then as my calories drop lower and lower, usually when I hit about 1,900 calories or so, I'll start transitioning to an OMAD style approach. So 1 meal a day. And I find that for me personally, having that single larger meal is more satiating than multiple smaller meals spread out throughout the course of several hours. I would rather be satisfied once and just go back to intermittent fasting state than have several smaller meals that always leave me wanting more. So from a satiation standpoint, I'll typically have that one meal once I get down around 1,900 calories. And at that point, I mean, I'm hungry for sure. Going through a prep, especially to the extent that I am for competing on stage, I get below 5% body fat. And when you're that low, you're just going to be hungry no matter what diet you're following. But for me, that OMAD approach, higher fat, moderate protein, lower carbs, is definitely more satiating and more hormonally stable. So my leptin and ghrelin isn't in as much a state of flux. I just feel much better than I have at similar caloric intakes with a lot more carbohydrates and lower fat.
Okay. Did you notice a dip in your performance when you first made that switch from a carbohydrate prep to a keto prep, or just in performance, not even in prep, like when you first made that switch?
I don't think so. I mean, for me, when I first started doing keto, I wasn't even really aware of what I was doing, and I didn't really know what I was looking for. So there was no knowledge of keto flu. There was no knowledge of blood glucose and blood ketones because this was all before any of that was popularized. So I wasn't really aware of that. I didn't notice a dip in performance to the point where it was concerning because I just felt, for me, the cognitive benefits and just the improvement in my relationship with food was far and away the most important thing. So for me, I was prepared to sacrifice some performance if I was able to regain that relationship with my food. Lo and behold, my performance didn't really seem to suffer anyways. So I don't really feel like I was sacrificing anything, at all. So it was very sustainable for me. And then now that I've been as deeply adapted as long as I have been, I certainly haven't noticed any dip in performance. I mean, honestly, my recovery has improved. My ability to build more lean muscle tissue has not been hindered. And I feel great with my training and my recovery. So I don't feel like as a bodybuilder, there's any downside for me to have been strict keto this entire time.
That's very interesting that because you didn't have those blogs that are around nowadays that are telling you to be careful about the keto flu, or be careful about the dip in your performance, or you're going to feel this around the 2-week mark and whatever. So people start looking for them, and it's like if you have one day where you're tired, it's like, oh, now I'm going through that. And it's just amazing how much the mind has so much power over how it makes you feel and how you interpret that. And it just takes a life of its own. Whereas somebody, if you bring them in and you give them a keto diet and you don't tell them anything, they might not even feel any dip in performance. They might not even go through keto flu. I wonder how much of that is just our minds.
I think a significant deal of it is our mind. I mean, from a physiological standpoint, yeah, you're going to want to make sure you're taking in more sodium and potassium, making sure you're hydrated, like certainly, hedging your bets and making sure that you're doing everything you can to physically minimize that drop in performance. But if you allow yourself to feel like it's coming and you just, give that so much power over yourself mentally, it's going to become much more pronounced. Whereas if you don't feel like I'm a big believer in, thoughts become things. You think things into existence, and that sounds woo woo, but it's so true. I mean, I never get sick. Like all these things happen to me because I feel like I put myself in the right mental capacity to accept the things that I want and forego the things that I don't. So yeah, I mean, I don't feel like my dip in performance was even noticeable because I never planned on it happening in the first place.
Amazing. It's funny you mentioned that you don't get sick, because I haven't gotten sick, not even with the flu, in over 9, I think it's been like 10 years now. And
Wow.
it all started once I cut out the carbs.
Yeah.
Isn't
I
that
think there's
interesting? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think honestly, just simply eating quality foods, that improves your immune system, your immune health, moving more, training, that all improves your immune system. I mean, I've been sick twice in my entire life, literally. And I don't really plan on, seeing a reason to get sick more frequently than that. I feel like people are so quick to jump for the next prescription drug, the next, anti-cough medication, the next vaccine, the next everything, to the detriment of their body's own ability to fight those naturally. So yeah, I mean, I don't get sick. I don't take anything. I mean, I can't even tell the last time I took medication for anything. Like I don't
Yeah.
take allergy meds. Like I just simply, become harder to kill by letting my body fight through its own things.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that diet and exercise. Those are the real drivers of your immune system. And if you're constantly getting sick, like I used to always get sick. I grew up in Lebanon and eating the Mediterranean diet, so plant-based, rice and beans and tabbouleh and hummus. If you've ever been to like a Lebanese restaurant, those staples, it was all the time. So it's very carb heavy. And every winter, I just would have like the sniffles
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Like, and then I would get like really bad colds, but then even when I don't, I would always have something going on throughout the winter. And even when I came to Miami that first year, I got sick 3 times. And it's so funny. It was right after I took for the first time in my life that I took the flu shot.
Mm-hmm.
I got sick with 3 flus, 3 months in
Yeah.
a row, like nothing I've ever seen before. And it's not because I just came to Miami, because that first year in Miami, I didn't get it that bad. It was only around this spring that I took the shot. And then a couple of months later, I got sick, and then sick again, and then sick. Something like I'd never experienced before, like 10 days, I'm gone. It's very interesting. Just
Yeah, it
right.
is interesting. And it's weird because it's such a controversial thing to talk about, which I mean, at the end of the day, like what you and I are both saying is just simply eat healthy and move your body. And that's going to be the best proverbial bang for your buck when it comes to allowing your immune system to become more robust. So it's weird that that would ever be considered controversial to have those recommendations. But yeah, I think if you're doing
Anything,
that, you're certainly setting yourself up for success.
of course. Anytime somebody says something is controversial, that generally means there's some money or profit that's at stake. That somebody's making tons of money, and now that bottom line is being jeopardized. And this is what happened when the pandemic hit, right? And we were like, natural immunity. You couldn't even mention it. I think they even banned Instagram banned the hashtag natural immunity, and now all of a sudden everybody goes on live TV and acknowledges that the science shows that it is more profound, than other
Yeah.
measures.
And I'm all for modern medicine. Like I'm all for it. Like we
Yeah,
just had a son 4 months ago, and if it wasn't for the advancements that have been made in modern medicine, then either him or my wife or both may not be here today. So I'm all for modern
yeah,
medicine, but not at the exclusion of, just simply living a healthy life. I feel like
yes,
we've come to this weird twilight zone now in which people feel that all these advancements are superior to just simply the proper lifestyle habits. But I
right,
feel like when you make that transition, you've totally flipped everything upside down and backwards.
yeah.
So I feel like we should always just lean into what we've known to be true, for
Exactly.
generations and
The
generations.
problem is the bullying that happens. The problem is when it's like you can't even discuss an issue, right? When it's like, no, this is misinformation and this is the right information, and who gets to decide? It's like a tech company that gets to decide, or a politician that gets to decide. That's the problem. It's stifling the conversation. But I think they're realizing that it's backfiring on them now. So
Yeah.
hopefully we don't, have
I'm all
a
for
repeat.
healthy discourse. I had a podcast yesterday with two hardcore vegans that are eating 700 grams of carbs a day. They're type 1 diabetics and they have like hardly any protein, totally different dietary protocol than me. But we can have a civil conversation because I want to learn more about what they're doing and why. So I feel like the more people are able to do that, the
Yeah.
better the world will be.
100% agreed. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your training regimen. Can you work out how many hours you're spending in cardio and how many hours you're spending in weightlifting, and give us all the details, and also like how do you train? Do you train to failure? All that stuff.
Yeah, so currently I'm not doing any cardio. I'm pretty much just doing resistance training with me being in a building phase. As far as resistance training goes, I'm typically training for an hour to an hour and a half each day, 5 to 6 times a week typically. And that resistance training portion pretty much holds constant whether I'm in a building phase or a cutting phase. So that doesn't really change. I'm implementing progressive overload. I'm training hard with more intensity, adding more volume over time. But the amount of time that I'm spending training is pretty much held constant whether I'm in a building phase or a cutting phase. The cardio, however, does change. So I'm not doing any cardio now. And then when I do transition into a cut for my next competition prep, then I will start with minimal cardio, probably only 10 minutes a day, 1 day a week on the Stairmaster. And then I'll gradually scale that up over the course of that 4 to 6 month length of time for that prep. And the reason being there is that a lot of people, they transition to a fat loss phase and they automatically ramp up the cardio drastically. They'll start to do 7 days a week of cardio. The problem with that is you'll see some initial weight loss, you'll see some initial fat loss, but your body's going to become adapted to that demand of cardio relatively quickly, and then you'll plateau, and then you'll not really have any room to increase further because you're already doing 7 days a week of cardio. And I mean, you can't do 8 days a week of cardio. So what I find to be beneficial is start with a minimum viable dose, i.e. the 1 day a week, very minimal time and frequency, and then just scale that up as you need. As your body starts to plateau from nutritional manipulations alone, you can start pulling the lever a little bit harder with the cardio. So for instance, if I'm doing the Stairmaster as my primary form of cardio, I'll manipulate either the frequency, the intensity, or the duration, but I honestly never really exceed about 20 minutes in a session. You'll never see me doing hours and hours of cardio on end. So yeah, I'll just pretty much go 20 minutes a day. And then at the very end of a prep, I may be doing that 5 to 6 days a week. Not really beyond that though.
Okay. What about the training to failure part? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm all for training. I mean, I think there's all these factors that matter when it comes to resistance training. You've got the volume, you've got the intensity, you've got the frequency, you've got the total time under tension, all of these different factors. I'm a fan of intensity. I like training with intensity. I'll implement, drop sets, supersets, things of that nature. Volume is also very important as well, like volume being defined as the amount of weight you're moving times the number of reps times the number of sets. That's going to yield total training volume. But if you're doing, if you're increasing total training volume, but there's no increase in the intensity, your body's going to be less likely to grow. So you do want to, be lifting hard and heavy weights, ideally being very important. And you need to implement some form of progressive overload so that your body's got additional stimulus placed on the body and there is reason to grow additional lean tissue. So that's pretty much what I'll do as far as training goes. A lot of people are under the misconception that when you transition to a fat loss phase, you need to drop the weight and lift more reps in order to get toned. I don't really agree with that.
Yeah.
Main reason being that when you do drop the calories, the primary goal should be to lose as much body fat and retain as much lean tissue as possible. You're not going to be optimal at building more lean tissue in the state of a deficit, but you need to retain as much of that lean tissue as possible. And if you start reducing your training intensity, your training load, then your body's going to try and fill that void that has, become as a result of that drop in calories by becoming more catabolic and tapping into lean tissue, because muscle tissue is incredibly metabolically demanding. Whereas if you continue to ask your body to, meet this demand of lifting heavy, then your body's gonna be much more likely to retain that lean tissue. So continuing to lift hard and heavy and with intensity throughout the competition prep phase as well is very important.
And again, I'm going to ask you again, just to make sure I got it. So like reps in reserve, how many would you like to keep generally?
Yeah, okay, so I totally brushed over the failure question. My apologies.
It's okay.
I'll
I'm like, did
typically
he answer it and I just didn't pay attention? Ask it again in a different way.
So I like training to failure as a marker for intensity, basically. I don't do failure on every set, because like if I go to failure, like if I'm doing like dumbbell bench press and then I follow that with barbell flat press, if I go to utmost failure on that dumbbell bench press on every single set, then I'm going to be pretty gassed when it comes to barbell bench press. So I'll typically do a failure set at the very end. So I'm typically training with 4 sets per given exercise, and I'll oftentimes go to failure on that fourth set, that final set. And that allows me to, recover fully before my next exercise. So that's honestly what I'll do. I use the preceding exercise, or preceding sets rather, as a way to kind of warm up, but then also, prepare my body for that final set going to failure. But yeah, you don't have to go to failure on every single set to see growth. You can activate muscle protein synthesis by just increasing that intensity, increasing that progressive overload, but you don't have to go to failure on every single set to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, because I feel like the recovery demands would be just so high. And it's just very difficult to sustain that unless you train your body. But that would take time. I feel like you can train your body to do anything, and you can train it to always, train for failure, kind of
Yeah.
like the Arnold Schwarzenegger whole thing. But I feel like that would take time. Like the guy would spend 4 or 5 hours a day at the gym lifting weights. So
Yeah.
you don't start there,
Yeah,
but
our
yeah.
bodies are super adaptable. I mean, I just started a new training split in which I'm doing like a full body split, which I've always kind of talked down upon, but I'm actually really enjoying it. So I'm hitting every single body part every single day I train, which is honestly really great for me right now, as much traveling as I'm doing, because there's not really any holes in my workout split, because everything is getting targeted every single time I train. And there was like a little bit of an acclimation period during the first week or two in which my body wasn't used to that training frequency, but now I'm not really having any issues with it whatsoever, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yes, interesting you mentioned that. I was watching a podcast with Ashley Kaltwasser. She's 3 times Miss Bikini Olympia, and her coach Bonilla, Adam Bonilla.
Hmm.
So I'm addicted to their podcast. I watch all of it, and they had one where they were talking about how bikini competitors in the United States are a little bit more scared of training glutes, because glutes is like a major area that is the focus in bikini. And but then you look at Brazilian fitness models, they're in the gym training glutes every single day, 6, 7 days a week. And it's like, it's just a mindset of like, once you break through that barrier, you realize that, yeah, the body adapts and it can do so. And this is why they have a lot of very well accomplished, bikini models there,
Yeah.
especially, in the bikini division, which is like different than bodybuilding.
Yeah, people are really worried about overtraining, but it's really hard to overtrain. Like, I mean, it's much harder than people realize. And as long as you're eating the proper diet and
Yeah.
you're getting enough micronutrients, enough macronutrients, and you're getting enough recovery, good quality sleep, it's really hard to overtrain. And your body is incredibly adaptable. So, like, it took, like I said, a week or two for my body to adjust from a standard body part split to a full body split. But
Uh-huh.
now, I mean, I'm not noticing any issues. Like I did squats yesterday as my leg movement for the full body split, but my legs are not excessively sore right now. And I did quite a bit of volume with that squat routine. But I can go in today and do squats again if I wanted to, and I wouldn't worry about my body not being able to recover.
And did you get sore in the initial 2 weeks and then just push through the soreness and trained regardless?
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, honestly, I've been training for so long now, anyways, that I don't really get near as sore, and I train so frequently. Like if I was to take a month off of training, then I would get really, really sore. I'd have the whole DOMS effect, et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah.
if you're training, consistently, you're not going to have that level of fatigue. Honestly, too, if you're fat adapted, because a lot of the metabolic pathways that are used for shuttling ketone bodies through your body are also used to clear lactate and pyruvate, so that lactic acid threshold that you typically experience with traditional diets is minimized, I've found, with a ketogenic diet, because you don't have that lactate burn and you're able to recover faster, you're able to clear that through your system faster. So yeah, I can train with a lot more frequency than I used to be able to.
That's very interesting. I'm assuming all of this is in your book, right? The Bible of keto. Can you share the title of your book with us?
Yeah, it's just ketogenic bodybuilding. What is the subtitle? What is the subtitle of my book? A Natural Athlete's Guide to Competitive Savagery. That's what it is. But
Okay.
yeah, ketogenic bodybuilding is the main title.
Are you gonna update it, or what was the latest update?
So I published it in January of this year, so it is pretty much all up to date. I will record an Audible version at some point, and when
Okay.
I do that, I may throw in a few off text ad lib things, but I don't know when I'm gonna have time to record that. Hopefully before too long.
Awesome. I haven't read it yet, but I know that I will have to, because one of my dreams has always been to compete, and I know that I would do it in a ketogenic way. And obviously, you are the best source to help me with that. So I'll
Yeah,
let
you
you know
should for
also.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, make that dream a reality.
Of course, no, 100%. I generally always accomplish my goals. It just almost always takes me way longer than I thought. You
Yeah.
know?
And there's honestly that's not a bad thing either. I mean, a lot of people, they have these goals and they try to rush into them, and they misstep or they falter or they just half-ass it. I mean, it's much better, in my opinion, to do it right, even if it takes a little bit longer than you originally expected. But at the same time, you what's the quote? Like, you basically, as much time as you allow for things, that's pretty much as long as it takes. So if you put
Parkinson's
yourself on a
law.
shorter time, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you can probably expedite that if you give yourself less time to do so.
Yeah, that's the thing. Setting a deadline. That's what I have to do. It's just the last time I set a deadline, it was a really dumb decision because it was it was the same summer that I was gonna get married, go on a honeymoon, and sit for my doctoral comprehensive exams, where they literally quiz you for 3 days straight on every
Hmm.
single graduate course you took in your PhD. So
Yeah, that
it's
would
like,
be a pretty
I
rough
can do
time to
all
do the prep.
three. So yeah, that didn't work out.
Yeah, the stars will never align, but you can certainly, hedge the bets in your favor for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So what I'm gonna do is once I achieve a certain body fat percentage where I feel it's like, this is great for lifestyle, I would love to have it all the time. Then I'm like, okay, I'm only 6 or 8 weeks out. That's when I want to set a deadline, you know?
Yeah,
That's my new way to think about it.
I like it. I like it. We can
Yeah.
totally make that happen.
Oh, I know, I know, I know. No, I'm definitely all about, like, trust me, I don't need encouragement. I'm the kind of person like that will never give up, you know, I'll just keep getting after it. It just takes usually more time.
I love it. Well, let me know when you start your prep for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask you about post-competition. Recently, now that you're experienced with keto, do you allow yourself to gain body fat, or how many pounds do you go up post competition? Yeah, all that.
Yeah, so the reverse diet is honestly one of the most important aspects of a prep, and people don't often talk about it because it's not as sexy. You know, people like to post on Instagram their abs, their definition, how great they look in a bikini. Nobody likes to talk about how much weight they've gained or the body fat they put on. But a healthy reverse diet is so incredibly important. Um, so typically, what I recommend doing is gradually increasing calories to return back to a healthy maintenance intake. I mean, you cannot sustain that leanness and level of conditioning that you reach at the peak of your show. So kind of returning back to some degree of normalcy that is sustainable is very important. So gradually increasing total intake, returning back to that, healthy metabolic set point. But then with regards to what that looks like, for me personally, I feel that, there's no need to go much beyond 20, 25 pounds tops, that window. Like a lot of people, like I used to put on 50 pounds post show, not necessary. Now, like me now, for instance, I'm 180 pounds and I'll probably compete at 160. So I'm 20 pounds over stage weight currently. My body fat is about 15%, which is pretty much, all that I would need to have. I feel good about how I look. I mean, I still have visible abs, separation in my quads. Man, I feel confident in how I look. And it's not going to be too much of a journey for me to lean down to be competitive, on show day again. There's like, if I was to put on 60 pounds, I'd have to be much, much more aggressive with my cut, before my next competition. That's really taxing on the body metabolically, hormonally, and I would just assume not do that. If I can stay within a healthier window at all times, it's going to be much better for me.
Yeah, and then you're gonna lose muscle anyway. So everything you ended up, when people go on a bulk and they end up putting on muscle, it's like, okay, but now you have a longer cut, right? And so when you're cutting, you're not only losing body fat, it's very difficult to not lose muscle as well. So you're gonna lose some pounds of that, from your muscle. So it's really about the net amount of muscle that you've been able to maintain, um,
Yeah.
above that previous show. This is how you really are going to improve show to show to show.
Yeah, 1000%. I feel like a lot of people, like, you can put on a little bit more lean tissue probably if you have a super aggressive building phase, but then to have that really aggressive cutting phase, like you said, you're going to lose that. So like, if at the end of the day, I'm able to preserve more lean tissue and do so in a much healthier fashion, why would I not just do that? So I think, that messaging really needs to be out there more.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit about recovery, because today I'm feeling it. I'm like, you know what? I am going to ask him about recovery.
All right, let's dive
What
into
are
it.
your thoughts on that? Do you take recovery days? All that kind of stuff.
I do take recovery days, but it's not like what I'll typically do is I'll train 5 to 6 days a week. So I've got, one day where I'm not doing resistance training. I'll still try and move. I think getting blood flow and stimulation to the muscle is probably the single best thing you can do for recovery. So just simply taking a ton of time off is likely not going to be best. That said, I will sometimes incorporate scheduled deloads into my training protocol. So a deload basically being defined as a week in which I'm going through my training block for that week, but at a much lower intensity. So I'll implement those every 8 to 10 weeks, depending on how my body's feeling. I'll just simply back off on the intensity of my training, still get the blood flow, still do the movements, but not, have near as much taxation to the central nervous system. And that's basically designed to get that blood flow, but back off the CNS so that I'm able to fully recover. But honestly, with me right now, traveling as much as I have been, that's kind of happening by default because there's longer stretches of time where I'm like, if I'm typically training 5 or 6 days a week, when I'm traveling, I may only be training 4 or 5 days a week. So I'm kind of getting that, that lengthened recovery time just by default. So that's kind of what I'm experiencing right now.
So how is your day-to-day set up these days? And your traveling is like, are you speaking? Like, what are some of the engagements that you're doing?
Yeah, so my wife and I sat down and filled out our calendar the other day, and it's like we have, I think, like 16 or 17 weeks of just straight travel, in which I'm literally not home, and I'm not going to be home for a weekend until Christmas, the rest of this year. And we've been traveling every single weekend for the past month or two. Mostly here lately has been conferences. So like I was in Austin, and then Omaha, and then Tennessee, and then New York City, and then last weekend I was in Kentucky for conferences that I've been speaking at. But then now we're also getting into hunting season, and I'm a big advocate for hunting. So that's going to be taking up a lot of my traveling as well.
Wow. Okay. So it's not all work. There is a little bit of fun there too.
Oh yeah, a little bit of fun for sure. I mean, plus, I mean, hunting is how I fill the freezer, so it's kind of like I'm grocery shopping.
That's true. That's true. It's so productive.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Um, so let's talk a little bit about well, I guess we covered the recovery days, right? You're pro active recovery, and I think I would do the same. It's very difficult for me to not move at all
Mhm.
on a recovery day. But first of all, it's very difficult for me to say, okay, today's a recovery day. And then it's even harder for me to do a recovery day where I'm not moving. So it always ends up being working out every day. And so today I woke up and I'm like, maybe I really need to recover now, because it's been like, I can't even remember the last time I took a recovery day, So it's something that I battle with and I struggle with, because I feel like you and I and anybody who's like in the field is a very like type A personality, always like a go-getter, and that's like in the work and in the workouts and in every area of our lives. And it's very difficult to know when you need to get that recovery and kind of slow down a little bit. And I know like exercise is just one form, or not exercise, it's just one form of recovery, but there are other ways to recover as well. Do you implement any additional things other than active recovery and not actually lifting weights, but just moving your body? What are the other things that you do for recovery?
Yeah, so sleep is super important. I don't know if I'm becoming like the stereotypical, old man I mean, in my old age, I guess. I don't know. I'm not that old, but I feel like if I don't get sleep now, I really feel it the next day. Whereas when I was in my early 20s, like I could feel like I could go days without sleeping and still be indestructible. Now I'm really protective over my sleep. And that's probably also because I have a 4-month-old now. So if I don't get a lot of sleep, I certainly feel it the next day, and I feel like I need more recovery. So I'm really protective over that. I've tried all different kinds of, quote unquote sleep hacks to really optimize for sleep quality. And we can dive into that if you'd like. But another
Yes.
thing I'd like to start doing
Yeah.
is I'm probably going to invest in a sauna at some point here very soon.
Mm.
And that will be a form of recovery. And then also just mindset meditation, like allowing myself to have a stillness at some point throughout the day, just have a stillness of the mind where I'm not stressed out. I'm not, just rushing off to the next thing. That will be good. I'm the world's worst when it comes to proactive stretching and mobility, so I can't really claim to be very good at that. But yeah, honestly, I think just protecting my sleep is one of the best things that I've done for recovery.
That's that's probably another reason why I'm feeling it today, because what I've been doing is experimenting with polyphasic and biphasic sleeping.
Oh yeah, I did that before, and it's brutal.
It
I
is,
like it,
right?
but it's not. I don't think it's sustainable. Not for me, at
That's
least.
what everybody tells me. And I'm really like, but the thing is, I get a lot of good days out of it.
Hmm.
That's the thing. And so when I have those good days, I'm like, you know what? It's working. But here's the thing. I'm not sticking to the schedule. My core
Yeah.
is always the same. I stick to that very well, 10:30 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. But then that 20-minute nap during the day, because I'm doing Everyman 1. That's like the easiest type of polyphasic sleeping. So you do that 6-hour core at night, and then I do a 20-minute nap, and you're supposed to have it at the same time every single day. But I can never get that right, because a lot of times I'll end up like scheduling interviews, and
Hmm.
stuff at around 1 p.m. So I end up taking that nap whichever around that time, sometimes even at 3 p.m. So I feel like maybe that's setting me back. I don't know. So you've experimented with that?
Yeah. So when we first started the business, keto break business, my girlfriend at the time, wife now, we were like, we were just inundated with workload. Like we were making the bricks, we were going to commercial kitchen to make these. Then we had to like package all the orders, ship out all the orders, and we would just run down. So we started doing this thing where I would work for 2 hours, she would sleep, and then we'd swap, and we would just repeat that for like days. So I would work, she would sleep, we would just swap back and forth every 2 hours, and that worked really, really well. But if there was ever a moment where we got off schedule, like we were just totally wrecked for like the next 3 days. Uh, and like things happen. Like when you own a business, like things never go according to plan. Things are never on schedule. So it just wasn't really good for us. I mean, if I lived in a monk house somewhere and I was just doing whatever I wanted to do, however I wanted to do it, then I would totally probably do polyphasic sleep. And I had no answer to no one. But since I have to answer to a lot of people, I don't think I could do it right now.
I came across Dave Asprey giving, I think it was an interview or a blog that I read, and he's talking about that it didn't work out for him for the same reasons, that strict schedule. And he's like, you don't need to be strict with that. You just need to optimize the quality of your sleep. So this is something that I'm excited to try. And he's like, if you just, measure your, like with an Oura ring, measure your sleep quality, it'll tell you how well you're sleeping. And then the way that you can improve the quality of your sleep is by buying those tinted glasses and wearing those, not eating too late, very close to your bedtime. There's a few other hacks, but I
Yeah.
think putting the glasses are really important. And then getting an app that's going to wake you up around the time where like you're outside a REM cycle or something like that. I'm not an expert yet. So
Yeah.
that you don't feel groggy all day long. So those are the things I really, because I'm going to try everything before I go back to sleeping, because if left to my own devices, I feel like my body will take 9 hours of sleep.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, like I turn the thermostat way down. I feel like if I'm sleeping, it's like, I mean, I would be fine with it being like 50 something, but Crystal likes it a little higher. So we typically settle on like 65 degrees. So I turn the thermostat down. I have blackout curtains. I wear a sleep mask if I don't have blackout curtains. I do mouth taping. Have you ever tried mouth taping?
No, that's a good one. You're right.
Yeah. So mouth
Yes.
taping, basically, if you're not taping your mouth, it's kind of like a mild form of sleep apnea. Basically, your tongue, your mouth opens and your tongue moves, it shifts, and it blocks your airway. When that happens, your body is not able to dip into quality deep and REM sleep like it would normally. Whereas if you mouth tape, you're keeping your mouth stationary, your tongue does not block your airway, and you're forced to breathe nasally. So you're able to get into more deep and REM sleep throughout the night. So that's something that I do like without fail. Like I've got little micro pore tape and I bring that with me when I travel. I have it on my nightstand. I mouth tape every single night. So that's been really good. Not eating right before bed, like that's something everybody says, and I'm not really that great. I normally don't even get home until later, so I'll typically still eat before bed. But I don't eat a ton of protein relative to fat, and I don't eat any carbs, obviously.
Hmm.
And not drinking. I think drinking is probably one of the worst things you could do for sleep quality.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't drink either. Okay, I'm gonna try those two things. Those are easy for me. I already have the tinted glasses. I'm gonna start wearing them. I'm gonna do the
Yeah.
mouth taping because that's easy. And I do have a face mask. A sleeping mask, so I'll do that as well.
I
And we'll
want to
see.
get one of those thermoregulation mattress toppers. Have you ever played around with those?
I've seen them. I haven't used them though. Okay.
Yeah, I've never used them either, but I've got clients that have them and they swear by them. So I'm probably gonna have to invest in one of those at some point.
See? I have so many things now to get excited about. I'm so happy. Okay. All right, good. I'll update you. I'll update everybody. I'll let you know if those things are working for me, because I feel like hacking your sleep and just if imagine freeing up an extra 5 hours, like instead of sleeping 9 hours, I can sleep, way less. And now I have an extra, let's say 5 hours a day to be productive. That's like an additional work day. Like the average American only works like 5 hours a day anyway,
Yeah.
So how amazing is that? How many hours do you sleep?
So I'll typically get to bed. I'm probably asleep by 9:30, and I typically wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So amount of time sleeping, I think my Oura ring typically says that I'm sleeping like 5 or 6 hours. So not a ton. But as long as I have those, like if I get 7 hours of sleep, I feel great. If I get any more than that, I feel groggy. So I don't want to just sleep indefinitely.
Yeah,
Well, indefinitely would be dead. So I definitely don't want to do that.
no.
But I don't feel like more is always better for me. Like 7 hours, 7 hours is kind of like my sweet spot.
Yeah, there's an even scientific article that this doctor, and he's a sleep researcher, that he published. I'm gonna make a video on that and share it with everybody, where he talks about how sleep is a myth, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, you don't need 8 hours, like not sleep, like 8 hours of sleep is a myth. And it's all
Yeah.
about all of the historical, I guess, precedents and all of the reasons why, scientifically speaking, we don't necessarily need 8 hours of sleep. It's more about, like you said, the sleep quality. And if you're doing everything that you're doing, the mouth taping and everything, you're good with 5 or 6 hours of sleep a night, you
Yeah.
know?
I do think there's benefit in timing things, and this gets harder too when it gets darker outside, earlier. But waking up and then soon after waking, seeing the sunlight, I think all of that there's a lot of truth in that.
True.
Kind of timing things off for your circadian rhythm and the natural sun patterns. So I try and always see the sunrise in the morning when I'm drinking my morning coffee. So I try and plan for that. But we live in a day and age now where we can just turn on a fluorescent light at any point, and our body doesn't know what's up, what's down anymore. So you
That's
got to kind of
true.
return to some degree of natural, intake there.
True. Yeah, like that first morning light. Yeah, everybody talks about it, how important it is. I guess you could just get a daylight lamp, and like if you wake up
Yeah,
at 3, you just turn it on and drink your coffee next to it.
I do have. I don't know if this is a sleep hack per se, but I do have an alarm clock that it's pretty cool. Like it works. It slowly gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and then I've got like birds chirping, and they
I
slowly
had
get
it.
louder and louder and louder. That to me is so much more pleasant than like this blaring alarm clock that just wakes me up and pisses me off first thing in the morning. Like having that gradual wake up is way better.
I had it, and when we moved from Miami to Ocala, I got rid of like 99% of what I owed. I just like left everything
Yeah.
there, and I came in, and I don't have it anymore. But it's so funny, and it's like my hubby is like, "Oh my God, and yet another gadget. What are you up to now?" It's like every day I have some new thing.
That's a worthwhile gadget, I feel. I feel like I'm just in a way better mood waking up to birds chirping and a slowly increasing light source than,
Yeah, I
this
loved
is,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
thank
sure.
you for reminding me about that. You reminded me of so many things. I'm gonna have like a whole new plan now for my sleep hacking.
Yeah, the biohacking wish list never ends.
I know, I love it. Okay, let's talk. Oh, you know what? Before we talk about mindset, because I feel like there's a lot you could share about that. Can you share a little bit about that Instagram? I remember it was years ago. I can't even remember when, but something happened to your Instagram account. It like
Yeah, so
disappeared.
I don't know honestly either what happened. I lost my Instagram account 3 separate times, actually 4 separate times. And then, but I don't have no idea. Like I never posted anything controversial. I never posted anything that was political, but I lost it when all of the political controversy was happening with like the pandemic and Donald Trump and like the Black Lives Matter. Like that's when all that was going down, that's when I lost my account.
So
Um,
2020,
yeah, 2020. But I wasn't posting anything about any of that stuff. So I have no idea why I lost it.
right?
And then I lost it for like 6 or 8 months. Like it was gone for a long time. So I made a separate account. Like I was doing everything, assuming I would never get it back. And then I just randomly got it back one day. So I don't know any of the details. I don't know what Instagram was thinking or doing. Like all that's a mystery to me still.
Did I'm assuming you filed an appeal.
Oh, I filed like tons of appeals and I never heard back from any of them. And they make it so hard. I mean, you can't even talk to a real person on Facebook or Instagram. Like it's
I know.
ridiculous. But I did all the appeals. I did all the submissions. and never heard back from any of them. And then one day I just randomly tried to log in and it let me log in. So your guess is as good as mine.
That is so insane. And that was the first time you lost it or the last time you lost it?
The last time I lost it, I was hacked. Like somebody hacked me. But those first 3 times, those were all the same situation. That was in 2020. The last time I lost it when somebody hacked me was I don't know, probably 6 months ago or so.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm starting to get my fair share of hacks. It's like every time I log
yeah,
into Facebook or Instagram and I can log in and nobody has posted something crazy like a crypto or some, scam, like, whew, not hacked
yeah.
today.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I'm really glad that I have a podcast because I feel like that's pretty safe. Like, I'm not really worried about getting that hacked. It's all hosted under my own provider.
Yeah,
But like social media, I think it's great. I think, a lot of my audiences, I wouldn't be able to have that audience if it wasn't for those.
yeah.
But I would certainly not want to have a singular platform and put all of my chips in that basket.
I agree 100%. Well, guess what? Even my website got hacked, or I don't know what they did. Like it would redirect right away to some scammy website trying to sell, has links that you're supposed to click on. So you would go to my website where I have all my coaching services, and like automatically it'll redirect. And I've created my own website with WordPress. I've literally learned how to do it from scratch. So it's not like I'm working with any, it's not like Wix or Squarespace. I do everything. Like I spent a whole day watching all kinds of YouTube
Hmm.
tutorials, and I was able to figure out the code that they inserted, and it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
ended up eating
Websites
a
are
lot
crazy.
of stuff I shouldn't have eaten that day. It's
Yeah,
so
building out
stressful.
websites
Yeah.
are, I don't know. I mean, I've spent many hours doing that too, and it can be a very stressful endeavor for sure.
Yeah, those are the influencer problems.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Probably
let's,
not best for polyphasic sleep. You get really mad at it and then you can't
right,
fall asleep.
that's true. Let's talk about mindset. Would you say that it is the biggest determinant of success? How is your mindset developed over time? Everything you can share with us.
Yeah, so mindsets. I mean, yes, I think it's 100%. Paramount. Like if you could have everything going for you, but you don't have the right mindset, like you're just never gonna excel. For me, when it comes to mindset, I think stoic thinking, stoic mentality has probably been the single best, train of thought that's impacted my mindset. Stoicism being defined as, simply taking your environmental factors as they are, and then making the most upon them, make the most of them, and then not allowing your emotions to dictate your actions. So just being really clear-headed, concise, and directed towards your thinking and your actions. I feel like right now that's incredibly important because so many people allow what's going on around them, whether that is the politics or that is the whatever controversial topic is hyped up at that moment, to totally dictate their mood throughout the rest of the day. Like they can let what they see on news that morning ruin or make their day, which I feel is very uh, debilitating. Like I would like to be empowered, and I feel like with stoic thinking I'm able to do that. I'm able to take my environmental factors and then act accordingly in a very, I don't know, just concise manner that leads to a productive day. That's what I've been able to do with the business. That's what I try to do with my competition preps. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday and all of his writing. So his book, The Obstacle is the Way, was a very pivotal book in my life. I literally listen to that book on repeat when I'm in a competition prep. Um, and yeah, with business too, like just simply going through all the trials and tribulations of owning multiple businesses, you learn very quickly that the stars will never align. And if something's going to go wrong, it absolutely will go wrong. So just being able to be very stoic in that approach, not letting my emotions get the best of me, and then just acting with what I can, with what resources I have at my disposal, and then just taking that into all aspects of my life, my relationships, my business endeavors, my fitness endeavors, and just being very, very stoic and very reasoned in my approach to everything.
So basically, don't eat what I ate when my website got hacked. It's like,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
know what?
Don't yeah.
Yeah,
Don't let
right.
things like don't let emotions and anger lead to like a frenzy in which you are acting, purely out of emotion.
And I'm assuming it didn't happen for you overnight. I'm assuming you worked at it, right? I feel like maybe when you keep hearing how hard it is, to be an entrepreneur, to run multiple businesses, and because I listen to all these podcasts and everybody like I know the general theme is that it's really, really hard, right? But we still want to do it. We still want to get after it. And then when it actually happens to you, that first time something big happens to you, like, even though you know you're supposed to be strong, I feel like in the first time, most people might crumble a little bit or might not necessarily be 100% disciplined. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, you gain more perspective with more time that passes, and then you just learn to expect things uh, because of past experiences. So like it classic example in business, for instance, with the keto bricks. Like I can spend $10,000 on a pallet of ingredients and expect it to arrive at a certain date for me to be able to do my production that week, and then without fail, it will not arrive. It'll be damaged. It'll be shipped to the wrong address. Like something wrong is going to happen. So I have to plan accordingly, plan very proactively, have contingency plans in place for when things do go wrong, because they most certainly will, and then just not let that frustration lead to me illustrating bad behavior as an employer, as a manager, as a boss, as a leader. I mean, my crew looks up to me, my wife looks up to me, my son looks up to me. Like I have to be a great leader to all of them, and if I let my emotions get the best of me and I act out of anger, I'm not doing anybody any favors. So just
Yeah.
having that perspective and then seeing all these things unravel all the time, you just kind of get a thicker skin to it all,
Yeah.
and you just plan better.
Yeah, and I feel just not giving up sometimes is enough. Like, because I like there was a month where I got hacked twice and
Hmm.
at multiple channels at the same time. And the first time it happened, it was like a meltdown. And then the second time it happened, it was like, okay, nothing happened last time. I wasn't, I didn't break down. And so I feel like it's not like I did anything special or different other than reflecting on that first time when I did the meltdown. Like I should have been stronger, and I kept going. And yeah, like you just develop thicker skin. And then because you've already seen the result of that problem, nothing, you're still alive, you're still doing what you want to do. It's fine, so you don't freak out or you don't panic the second time something happens.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's kind of like a prep too. I mean, the first time you do a prep for a competition, you've never done it before. You have no perspective. That fear of the unknown weighs so heavily on you. It creates all this anxiety, all this nervous energy that oftentimes allows or leads to you looking worse off on show day because of the increase in excess water retention, all the bad things that happen. Whereas the more shows you do, the more preps you do, you just know what needs to happen almost by instinct. Like when you need to adjust your macros, when you need to adjust your cardio. Like you just feel what you need to feel and act accordingly. And that comes with experience, with perspective, with going through the trials and tribulations, and just having that in your past, in your tool belt. Like
Yeah.
what needs to happen.
And then you don't have limiting beliefs anymore. Once you do it once, you have the faith and the belief that, yeah, you can do it again and again. But like this is what they all say, right? The first prep, worst prep. It's always the
Hmm.
hardest, right?
Yeah, I feel like some people take that and they have this like fake it till you make it philosophy. Like imagine that you've already made it. And I think like I don't really put much stock in that. I don't believe in the whole fake it till you make it. Like I believe in documenting the journey as it is and being completely transparent, honest with that. And then as you do that more and more, like you will inherently make it, and then that leads to true confidence as opposed to this manufactured fake confidence. I mean, I didn't have a clue what I was doing when I started a business, but now I've built several successful businesses, so I feel confident in my ability to do whatever the hell I want to do in my life.
Amazing. I know it's been an hour and I know how busy you must be. Are you good with time if we take an extra, let's say 10 minutes, or do you have another engagement? No,
No,
yeah.
no, no. My time is yours.
Fantastic. Okay. Because I just still want to ask you about your meal plan, like exactly what you're eating, and refeeds and water. Those are like the three things that I feel like, because we talked about the exercise, but
Yeah.
what about the diet?
Yeah, so as far as the meal plans go, like the foods that I'm consuming in a building phase or in a prep are honestly the same foods. I just track them more tightly and manipulate the intake of those foods. So my diet consists of good quality, wholesome, single ingredient, natural foods that are sourced well. Like I said, I hunt quite a bit, so like venison makes up a staple of my diet. Beef, liver, ruminants, lamb. Uh, I like fish. I like seafood. I like good quality saturated fats, duck fat, butter, ghee, lard, all that good stuff. I'll have a keto brick pretty much every single day as a fat source, so I'll have that. Love eggs. I don't eat a ton of vegetation. Sometimes I'll get a hankering for a salad, so I'll have a big salad, and I won't feel, I don't feel like vegetation leads to my performance per se. I'll just like the craving or like the change in taste and texture from time to time. Um, but I don't really let that become a staple per se. I'm certainly not plant based, definitely animal based. And then let's see here, what
That's
else?
music to my ears.
Yeah. I mean, like it's weird. There's all these different camps around vegetation. Some people think that all plants are phytochemicals and trying to kill you, and there's some truth to that. But I think a lot of people have taken it to an unnecessary extreme. And then other people think that everything that you should consume should be plant based, and I certainly don't agree with that either. I mean, 98% of what I eat's pretty much animal based, though.
Right, right.
Yeah. And then as far as water intake, well, there was something in between there, right? There was like a meal plan. There's something.
Meal plan refeeds and then water.
Refeeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So refeeds, I don't do carbohydrate refeeds. I'll do ketogenic caloric refeeds. So in the context of a prep, when my calories are at their lowest, I'll start to introduce strategic ketogenic caloric refeeds. And that's basically just a bolus of fat and protein. Usually I'll start with about a 30% increase in calories above baseline. And that's going to be designed to give me a slight metabolic boost, a slight hormonal benefit from having that increase in fat and protein, and then more so than anything, a psychological benefit from being in a deficit for so long, having a day to look forward to. That allows me to kind of return to more of a parasympathetic state, and that allows me to flush out excess fluid and just simply relax by having that extra calories. And then within the context of a prep, that allows my muscles to fill out a little bit more for stepping on stage. So I'll have a refeed the night before a competition. That allows me to fill out a little bit more, have a little bit more energy for the day of the show. And I'll tweak my electrolytes a little bit to draw any of the fluid in my subcutaneous layer of skin into the muscle tissue itself so that my skin appears thinner, my muscles appear fuller, and I bring a better look on show day. And then as far as water goes, I typically drink probably about a gallon a day on average. A lot of competitors will cut water out in leading up to a show. They'll do all these crazy dehydration techniques. They'll take diuretics. They'll do water loads, water depletion. I don't do any of that stuff. I just simply stay hydrated because, I mean, 70% of your body is water. So like if you're dehydrated, you're not going to have that full look in your muscle tissue that you're looking for. So a lot of people appear very flat on stage because they're dehydrated. So I'll typically stay very hydrated, and then I'll just simply tweak my electrolytes slightly to ensure that any of the fluid that I have in my subcutaneous layer of skin winds up in my muscle tissue. So yeah, I'm not doing any kind of crazy water cuts or anything like that. And then, yeah, I'll pretty much have about a gallon a day roughly.
Yeah, me too. But for me, the gallon a day happens very easily when I do my cardio, when I run a lot, I run a ton. And it's so easy to hit that. But on the days when I don't do enough exercise, it's a struggle, but then again, I'm much smaller. So a gallon for me, it's really big,
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is like if you're, you want to try and make like 5 of your daily urinations relatively clear. Like if you're checking that box, then you're probably pretty hydrated.
Yeah. Probably a gallon might be too much for me, but I read this article about it's like a random article that I read about this woman who started drinking a gallon of water for 30 days, and she shows her picture before versus after. The woman looks 10 years younger, which it's just insane transformation just from that water. I'm like, I wonder what would have. So I took a picture at the beginning, and now I'm doing a 30-day experiment.
Oh, yeah?
So we'll see.
You have to share that for sure. I'm curious
Oh
to see how it
yeah,
turns out.
I have to, absolutely. Are you planning to compete anytime soon?
Yeah, so I'll compete in 2023. I planned on competing in 2020, and then a week before the show, COVID canceled everything. I'd already done all the prep. I'd gotten lean, and then the shit got canceled right before the show. But yeah, I'll compete again in 2023. That'll be the first time I've competed since 2017. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've been in a building phase since 2017?
Well, apart from that I did a cut in 2020 with the intention of competing then. So I was in a cut then technically. But then, yeah, after that, I've been in a building phase. So I've been in a building phase since 2020.
Okay. And which league are you competing in?
I've competed in several. I've competed in NPC, OCB, NANBF, INBF. The one I'm mostly going to focus on next year is going to be the INBF, WNBF, World Natural Bodybuilding Federation is the federation there. So
Yeah, it's
I'll be
drug
competing in
tested
that
and
one. Yeah, all drug tested, polygraph tested, urinalysis tested if you win. They're probably the strictest when it comes to natural bodybuilding regulations.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, this is a tough question because with business, you never really know. I mean, like our business has only been in existence for 5 years, and what we're doing now is so different than what I would have imagined it being 5 years ago. So I can have a prediction, and it may look totally different than what reality has in store for me. But I am very excited about this next decade of my life. I feel like my 30s, I'll be 31 this month. So the 30s, my 30s, I feel like are going to be very good years. I've got my son, he's 4 months old right now. We'll probably have another at some point in the next year or two or three. The business is growing. We're opening up other businesses. We've got plans for many other things in the pipeline. So yeah, I feel very, very positive, very optimistic about the future. But as far as like the details, your guess is as good as mine. But I'm going to be taking over one day at a time.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it can be a lot, especially you're juggling so many things all at the same time. So, just the social media, the content production, the multiple businesses, the speaking that you do, all those things. I mean, and the being in a relationship, having children, and then the hunting part, that's a whole other thing. So we get it.
Yeah, lots going on, but I would rather be busy than bored for sure.
Of course. Oh, and then the competing, we forgot that. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert. Where can people find you and what do you want to pitch? So Keto Brick, your book, all the stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, my profile, my website, my, handle online is all Keto Savage. So ketosavage.com, you search that, you'll find me. And then the Keto Brick business, ketobrick.com. And then my book is available on Amazon, or you can go to ketogenicbodybuilding.com directly for that. But yeah, if you search Keto Savage, you'll find me and you'll kind of see where all my different channels go.
Yeah, and I will link them also below so that people can find you easily. Thank you so much, Robert. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us. And thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.